The population most at risk from the coronavirus, of course, is older people. And many younger relatives and friends are wondering how they can best protect older members of their family until the crisis is over. Here's Professor Andrea Mayer, who's a geriatrician from the University of Melbourne. Andrea, welcome. So how dangerous is the virus for older people, and what do we mean by older people?
So the virus is dangerous. We do not know how dangerous it really is. We know that older individuals are more at risk for a detrimental outcome if they have an infection, for example. We only know from other countries that the mortality rate of individuals being 60 years and older is round about 8%. If somebody is attacked with corona and 80 plus years, it's around about 15%. Death rate.
So what
is old? That's of course a good academic question. We are talking about 65 plus years and older.
Okay, so if you are 65 and older, but you're fit and healthy, you don't have any underlying conditions, are you still at an elevated risk?
Everybody is at risk, but the risk is much smaller. We know if you have cardiovascular disease, if you, for example, have a cardiac disease of diabetes, then your risk is much higher. So for the healthy ones, there is still a risk, but it's a minimal risk.
So what should people do then? Is it best to stay away from older people? Because as we've been told, you may be carrying the virus without showing any symptoms.
Yeah, actually, we do not know if this is really true. I think the research is really evolving. But what we know is if you have symptoms, and especially flu-like symptoms, so if you are coughing, you're not feeling well, if you have fever, then please do not go to either nursing homes or visit older individuals or individuals at risks. And so the individuals at risk are of higher age, of course, and the ones with already having diseases. Yeah. So try to avoid that. Try to avoid contact with everybody if you're feeling sick, and actually go to your GP and be in contact with your GP to sort out what's going wrong.
It's worrying though, isn't it, if you have an older relative or friend who lives on their own, who isn't terribly mobile, what's the advice then if they're relying on you?
Yes, of course. So in principle, you can be in contact with your relatives, older relatives, if you're feeling well. So we just have to make sure if you're not feeling well and you have the flu-like symptoms, that you should really not be in contact with risk groups and seek advice from your GP. So that's most important. But of course, life is going ahead, so we need some contact with each other. But please wash your hands and really stick to the hygiene rules, which is very important. So washing your hands with water and with soap. And if you are coughing, please be careful and use the tissue, etc. So all the hygiene rules we are talking at the moment constantly about.
Yeah. And that contact issue that you mentioned is so important, isn't it? Particularly for people who have dementia, contact with loved ones, and people who are just familiar faces to them is important. So is there a balance then between people's mental and their physical health?
Look, yes, of course, because we know that if you are mentally not well, you don't feel well, that also your physical well-being is declining. However, we are now in a situation where we would like to prevent corona to affect more individuals. So once again, if you don't feel well and you have flu-like symptoms, do not visit your relatives, because then they are at great risk to also get the infection and possibly to die with detrimental outcome. So again, here, if you're feeling well and you can still visit, but if you are not feeling well, please take a phone call or try to make contact differently.
Professor Andrea Mayer, thank you.
Thank you.